The story begins with a chilling sight, a battered alien spaceship spiraling out of control and crashing onto a barren planet. The spaceship is no longer the sleek, imposing vessel it once was. Scorched and broken, it slams into the ground, sending dust and debris flying into the empty air. From within the wreckage, a small, fragile figure crawls out. An alien child, her body covered in burns and scratches, struggles to move. Her skin, once a glowing shade of blue, is now dull and battered. She is weak, her tiny breaths shallow and labored. This child is the last of her kind, a survivor from a species that had once terrorized the galaxy with their unmatched technology and ruthless, cold-hearted ways. The humans had finally launched a massive, decisive attack to stop them once and for all. After years of brutal conflict, the war had come to an end, humanity had won. But the price of victory was steep. Entire alien colonies had been wiped out, and now, the last remnants of this technologically superior race had scattered across the universe. The child, abandoned by her own people, was left to die alone on a desolate world. No one had come to rescue her, no one had cared. To the galaxy, she was nothing more than a casualty of war. As she drags herself across the scorched earth, her small hands struggling to grasp the jagged rocks, something in the distance catches her attention, a faint, rumbling sound. It grows louder, drawing closer. She looks up and spots a human military ship descending from the sky. It's a sleek, advanced vessel, far more refined than the alien ship that had crashed. The ship hovers above her, scanning the landscape with its sophisticated sensors. The child tries to move toward the ship, but her body can barely keep up. She's so weak, every breath feels like a battle, and her vision starts to blur. Back inside the human ship, a crew of soldiers watches the alien child through their monitors. Their faces are grim. They have heard stories about the alien race, stories of their cruelty, their weaponry, and their relentless pursuit of dominance. The soldiers on board are battle-hardened veterans, used to seeing the worst of what war can bring. But none of them have ever encountered anything like this before. Captain Ava Turner, the leader of the crew, stands at the front of the room, studying the screen. Her sharp eyes narrow as she watches the child struggle, seemingly helpless and innocent. The rest of the crew debates what to do. Some of them argue that they should leave the child behind. After all, she's an alien, and the species that had attacked Earth, her species, had shown no mercy. What if this is a trap? What if she's luring them into an ambush? One soldier, Lieutenant Harris, speaks up, his voice filled with suspicion. This is what they do. They send their weak and helpless to fool us into thinking they're harmless. We can't fall for it. Another soldier, Sergeant Mitchell, shakes his head. We can't leave her here to die. It's not right. If she's really abandoned, we might be her last chance for survival. Captain Turner remains silent, watching the child through the glass. She's seen so much death, so much destruction. She knows the alien species was responsible for killing countless human lives, including many of her friends. But something about this child's vulnerability stirs something deep inside her, something she hasn't felt in a long time. Mercy. Maybe it's a trap, Captain Turner finally says, her voice calm but firm. But we can't let her die like this. We're not the monsters they are. Let's take her aboard. But be ready for anything. The crew falls silent, each person contemplating the decision they are about to make. The tension in the air is thick. As the captain gives the order to lower the ship's landing ramp, the soldiers prepare for the possibility that this could turn into a fight. The ship hovers just above the ground, and the ramp slowly lowers, revealing the alien child lying on the cracked, dusty soil. She doesn't move much, only glancing up at the soldiers with wide, frightened eyes. Just as one of the soldiers steps forward to approach her, the ground shakes. The air is filled with the sound of heavy engines roaring in the distance. The crew's attention snaps to the horizon, where a dark shape appears, another alien ship, much larger and much more menacing than the one the child had crashed in. It's moving fast, headed straight for them. The soldiers immediately recognize it for what it is, an enemy warship. The child is still too weak to move, and now, they have no choice but to act quickly. Captain Turner looks at her crew with urgency in her eyes. We don't have much time. Get her aboard, now. Without hesitation, the soldiers rush forward, lifting the fragile child into their arms. The air is thick with the tension of knowing they've made the right choice but are now facing an enemy that might be far stronger than they anticipated. The enemy warship approaches faster than they expected, and it's clear the aliens are not here for a peaceful encounter. With the child safely aboard, Captain Turner orders the ship to lift off. The ramp retracts, and the human ship ascends rapidly, narrowly avoiding a barrage of laser fire from the alien warship. The child, still in a state of shock, stares up at the human soldiers who are now protecting her, unsure of who these people are, or why they chose to save her. As the human ship zooms into the atmosphere, leaving the alien warship behind, the soldiers are left with one pressing question: what is the true nature of this child? Is she truly just an innocent survivor, or does she hold some secret that could change the fate of humanity forever? The suspense builds as the ship speeds toward their base, the crew filled with uncertainty in anticipation about what's to come. The child, weak but alive, may hold the answers to questions they never even thought to ask. The human ship was flying high above the barren planet, its engines humming steadily as it cut through the void of space. Inside the ship, the soldiers were tense, each one trying to process what had just happened. The alien child, fragile, weak, and covered in burns, was lying unconscious on one of the medical beds. Her small, alien body seemed out of place on the sterile human ship. Despite the violent history between their species, she appeared harmless, even innocent. Her eyes, which had once glowed with the chilling certainty of her people's supremacy, were now dim and filled with fear. The soldiers gathered in the briefing room, discussing the next steps. Some were still wary, unsure whether bringing the alien aboard was a mistake. But Captain Ava Turner, who had made the final decision to save the child, remained calm. She knew that there was more to this situation than met the eye. The child had been abandoned by her own people, left to die on that cold, empty planet. That alone spoke volumes about her fate. But what was it that made her different from the others? As the ship continued its journey, Captain Turner ordered that the child be moved to the medical bay. She needed to be examined, to ensure she was stable enough to survive and recover. The crew wasn't sure what to expect, but they had to act fast. The child lay in the medical bay, her fragile form hooked up to various monitors. Her breathing was slow but steady. She was alive, but she was still unconscious, unable to respond to the humans who surrounded her. As the medical team worked on her, the atmosphere in the bay was tense. The soldiers stood guard, their weapons still ready, even though the child hadn't shown any signs of aggression. Suddenly, something strange happened. A faint light flickered around the child's body. At first, the crew thought it was just a malfunction, but then the light grew brighter. The child's skin began to glow faintly, like a pulse moving beneath the surface. The soldiers froze, unsure of what to do. Was this some sort of weapon? Was the child activating something dangerous? Without warning, a holographic image shot up from the child's body, hovering in midair. It was a series of complex alien symbols, more intricate than anything the humans had ever seen. The hologram shifted and changed, forming what looked like blueprints, detailed designs of technology the humans couldn't begin to comprehend. Some of the blueprints showed weapons, others looked like maps, and some were strange patterns that seemed to move on their own. Captain Turner stepped forward, her heart pounding. She knew the aliens were advanced, but this was unlike anything they had encountered before. The holograms flickered, their lights dimming, but they continued to shift and change, as if trying to communicate something. What is this? Lieutenant Harris muttered, his eyes wide with confusion. Is she trying to talk to us? The medical officer, Dr. Sanchez, looked at the holograms in awe. These designs, this technology, it's beyond anything we've ever seen. It's like she's showing us something. Captain Turner stared at the projections, her mind racing. Was this a message? Was the child trying to tell them something? Or was she simply malfunctioning? She couldn't be sure, but one thing was clear, this child was far more than she appeared. Keep trying to decode it, Captain Turner ordered, her voice steady despite the uncertainty. We need to understand what this means. The crew worked quickly to analyze the images, but the alien language was far too advanced for their computers to comprehend. It was unlike any known language, even beyond the reach of their AI systems. The child, still unconscious, seemed unaware of the chaos unfolding around her. Just as the crew struggled to make sense of the alien blueprints, the ship's alarm suddenly blared to life. The crew's attention snapped to the control panel as the ship's AI issued an urgent warning. Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from a nearby planet, the ship's AI, known as REX, announced. The signal is encrypted. It's originating from a military outpost on the planet's surface. Captain Turner immediately turned to the control panel. Can you decode it? Attempting to decrypt now, Captain, REX replied. A moment later, the AI's voice turned grim. The signal is from the enemy alien fleet. They've launched an offensive on the planet. It seems the planet is under attack. The room fell silent. The soldiers exchanged nervous glances. If the alien fleet was attacking a human outpost, it meant they were back in full force, and their war wasn't over. We're going to need all hands on deck, Captain Turner said firmly. Get the crew ready for combat. We're heading there now. But as the soldiers prepared for battle, another realization struck. The alien child was in the room, unconscious, unable to defend herself. Yet, the holographic projections she had activated had shown something important. Could she be a key to understanding the enemy's plans? Could she be the reason they were under attack? As the ship moved toward the planet, Captain Turner paced back and forth, contemplating their situation. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her shoulders. The child's survival was now more important than ever. The crew might have saved her, but they didn't fully understand why. Was this child just a casualty of war? Or was she somehow tied to the aliens' attack? Could she be the key to stopping them? As they neared the planet, another distress signal flashed on the screen. It was from a nearby colony, one that was about to be hit hard by the alien fleet. They needed to act fast. We protect this child, no matter what, Captain Turner said, her voice filled with determination. This is bigger than just a fight for survival. We have to ensure she's safe. She might be the one to end this war. The crew nodded, the weight of their new mission clear. The child, once seen as a simple victim, had now become a symbol of hope, a hope that, if they could protect her, they might just have a chance to turn the tide of the war. With the fate of an entire planet hanging in the balance, the humans and their unlikely ally, this mysterious, fragile child, were about to face their most dangerous challenge yet. As the days passed aboard the human ship, a fragile sense of trust began to grow between the alien child and the crew. At first, she remained distant and frightened, hiding her true emotions beneath the surface. But as the humans showed her kindness and gave her the safety she so desperately needed, something changed. The child began to open up, albeit in small, cryptic ways. One evening, as Captain Turner sat with the child in the medical bay, trying to learn more about her past, the alien's eyes suddenly flickered with light. Her glowing pupils seemed to shift as though they were trying to access something deep inside her mind. Captain Turner watched her closely, unsure of what was happening, when the child's small hands jerked out, her fingers twitching as if writing invisible words in the air. The child's voice, barely a whisper, filled the room. Weapon, inside, destroy. Captain Turner leaned forward, her heart racing. What do you mean? What weapon? The child's eyes flickered again, and she raised her trembling hand, her fingers hovering over the air. Slowly, a series of fragmented images appeared, visions, hazy and distorted, but enough for Captain Turner to see the danger lurking beneath the surface. The first vision showed a sleek, alien craft firing a devastating beam of light, obliterating everything in its path. In another vision, there was a massive, crumbling city, burning as the sky above it rained destruction. The images shifted, fast and relentless, before finally, the child stopped, her face pale and filled with exhaustion. "It's inside me," she whispered, barely able to speak. "Locked, only I can see it." Captain Turner was stunned. This child, this fragile being, had knowledge inside her, knowledge that could change everything. It was clear now, the child was no ordinary survivor. She held the key to stopping her species' deadly weapon, but there was no way to know how to unlock it. The ship's crew, too, were starting to piece together the mystery. Working together, they attempted to decode the alien technology embedded in the child's mind, though it wasn't easy. The data was encrypted in a complex pattern that only the child species could fully understand. Even with the best efforts of their most advanced computers and AI, the crew was no closer to cracking the code. But they couldn't give up now. As the days stretched on, Captain Turner and the child grew closer. There was a bond forming between them that neither of them had expected. Turner had lost her own daughter in a previous battle against the alien forces, and the pain of that loss had never truly healed. But there was something about the child, the way she reminded Turner of her own daughter, that made her want to protect her, to ensure she had a chance at life. Despite the child's origins, despite the looming threat from her species, Captain Turner began to see past the alien exterior. In the child's wide eyes, Turner saw only innocence and fear. "You remind me of my daughter," Captain Turner said softly one day as they sat together in the quiet of the ship. "She was about your age when I lost her, to the aliens." Her voice caught, but she quickly regained her composure. "But I won't lose you. I'll protect you." The child looked up at her, her eyes glowing softly in the dim light of the room. She said nothing, but her silent gaze spoke volumes. It was the first time Captain Turner felt the weight of her words truly reach the child. Days turned into weeks as the crew worked tirelessly to decode the alien technology. They had gathered pieces of the puzzle, but it wasn't enough. The encrypted information was still too complex, too elusive. Each day, they came a little closer, but something always held them back. And with every moment that passed, the threat of the alien fleet loomed ever closer. Captain Turner's hope that the child held the answers was starting to grow, but so did the uncertainty. What if they couldn't unlock the key in time? What if the weapon was already in motion? Then, just when it seemed like they might be nearing the final breakthrough, disaster struck. The ship's sensors suddenly flashed red. An alert blared through the communication system, sending the entire crew into a panic. "Captain, enemy warships approaching. They've located us," the AI, REX, announced, its voice filled with urgency. Captain Turner's heart sank. The aliens were coming, and they were coming fast. The ship's position had been compromised, and now they were being hunted. "Prepare for battle," Captain Turner ordered, rushing to the control room. The crew scrambled to their stations as the ship's weapons were powered up and defensive shields engaged. The atmosphere was charged with tension as the sound of enemy ships grew louder. But there was more at stake than just their survival now. The child's life was in immediate danger. If the alien fleet found out that she was aboard the ship, they would stop at nothing to destroy her. She was their greatest weapon, an innocent vessel carrying the secrets of their destruction. As the first alien ships appeared on the radar, Captain Turner knew they didn't have much time. "We need to get her to safety," Turner said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "If the aliens find out she's here, it's over." The crew scrambled to shield the child, moving her to a secure part of the ship. But just as they were about to reach the safety of the lower levels, the ship rocked violently, throwing everyone off balance. Enemy fire had hit, and the ship was taking heavy damage. "We can't hold them off forever," Lieutenant Harris shouted, his voice full of panic. "They're overwhelming us." Captain Turner refused to let fear take over. She knew their mission was clear: protect the child at all costs. As the ship's alarms blared louder, the crew fought back with everything they had, firing back at the alien ships and activating every defensive measure they could. But the enemy fleet was vast, and the humans were vastly outnumbered. The fate of the child, and the future of humanity, now rested on the fragile shoulders of Captain Turner and her crew. If they could keep the child safe and unlock the key to her species' deadly technology, they might just have a chance to stop the war. But with the alien fleet closing in, the time was running out, and the stakes had never been higher. The sky above the barren planet was dark, but it was about to be set ablaze by the fierce battle that was unfolding. The enemy fleet, massive and unyielding, was closing in fast. It was led by a colossal mothership, its black hull gleaming ominously in the distant stars. Aboard the human ship, the atmosphere was tense, with every crew member preparing for the worst. Captain Turner stood in front of the tactical display, her face etched with determination. The odds were not in their favor, but they couldn't back down now. The human ship was small, heavily outmatched by the enemy's vast fleet. The aliens had superior technology, their ships capable of devastating weaponry and advanced defense systems. But they had one thing the enemy didn't: the child. The child held the key to stopping the alien weapon, and if they could unlock it in time, it might be humanity's only chance to survive this war. "Get ready." Captain Turner's voice rang out, cold and commanding as the crew rushed to their stations. The air was thick with tension, and the urgency was palpable. The child, now weak and exhausted, was secured in the medical bay, her frail form a reminder of what was at stake. Turner couldn't help but glance toward her, silently promising to protect her no matter the cost. As the enemy ships drew closer, the human vessel activated its cloaking technology. The ship flickered, becoming nearly invisible against the vastness of space. But the cloaking wasn't perfect, just a temporary advantage to buy them a little more time. They had to act fast. "Prepare the drones," Captain Turner ordered. AI-assisted, on my mark. On her command, dozens of small combat drones launched from the ship. They hummed through space, their artificial intelligence guiding them with pinpoint precision as they scattered to engage the enemy. Explosions erupted as the drones launched their laser beams toward the advancing alien ships, but the enemy's defenses were strong. The drones dodged incoming fire, but many were destroyed in the chaos. Space itself seemed to tremble as the first wave of missiles from the alien fleet connected with the human ship, sending violent shockwaves through the hull. The crew was thrown off balance, but they quickly regained their footing. Captain Turner's focus remained unwavering as she ordered the crew to fire back. The ship's cannons roared to life, firing massive blasts of energy toward the enemy. "Hold them off," Turner shouted, her voice sharp with command. "We can't let them get any closer." But despite their efforts, the alien mothership loomed large, its shields practically impenetrable. The humans were doing their best to make a dent, but it was clear they were being overwhelmed. The battle intensified as explosions rocked the space around them, sending debris flying in all directions. It was a struggle just to stay alive. Meanwhile, the child, who had been barely conscious, began to stir in the medical bay. Her body trembled with the weight of what was happening around her. Her mind, once an enigma to the humans, was starting to unlock something. Holograms began to flicker around her, images of alien technology materializing in the air. The child's breathing was shallow, but her eyes glowed with the intensity of something extraordinary. Captain Turner had ordered the child to be kept in the safest part of the ship, but as the battle raged on, the child's connection to the alien technology began to shift. Her fragile form began to glow brighter, her energy increasing with each passing moment. The child was unlocking something deep within her, her race's weapon, the very thing that could destroy humanity, was now at her fingertips. "Captain, the child, something's happening," Lieutenant Harris reported over the comms. "Her vitals are spiking. It's like she's channeling something, but we can't make sense of it." Captain Turner's heart raced. She could only hope that the child was unlocking the secrets they needed to survive. But at the same time, there was fear. What if the child's connection to the technology was too powerful? What if she couldn't control it? As the battle continued, the human ship moved into position to make a final attempt at taking down the mothership's shields. The plan was risky, almost suicidal, but it was the only chance they had. Captain Turner, along with a few of the crew, was preparing to board a small fighter ship to get close enough to the mothership and plant a sabotage device on its shield generator. They would need the child's help to pinpoint the exact location of the generator. With the ship under heavy fire, Turner made the call. "Activate the final phase. We're going in." The crew worked quickly to release the fighter ship. The small craft rocketed into space, dodging incoming fire from the enemy fleet as the mothership loomed large in the distance. Captain Turner and the crew aboard the fighter ship raced toward the target, their hearts pounding in anticipation. They could see the enemy's guns charging, ready to obliterate anything that came too close. The situation was desperate. Back on the human ship, the child's condition was rapidly deteriorating. Her body was frail, her energy flickering in and out like a dying star. Sweat covered her face, and her hands twitched uncontrollably. Her connection to the technology was overwhelming, and it seemed as though she couldn't keep it under control. "What's happening to her?" asked Lieutenant Harris, his voice thick with worry. She's unlocking the weapon's secrets," Turner said, her voice laced with both fear and hope. "If she can do it, we can stop them." "But, is she dying?" The uncertainty hung in the air like a cloud of impending doom. Would the child's mind and body be able to handle the strain of unlocking the weapon's secrets? Or was she fading, unable to survive the power she held inside her? The battle was far from over. The human ship was under attack, the fighters were closing in on the mothership, and the child, humanity's last hope, was losing strength. As the explosions continued to rain down on them, the humans fought desperately, not only to survive but to protect the one being who could turn the tide of the war. The suspense hung thick in the air. Time was running out. Would they succeed in disabling the mothership's shields in time to save themselves? Would the child's secret knowledge be enough to bring the alien threat to its knees? Or would humanity lose its last hope, as the odds stacked higher against them? The battle was raging. The answers could only be found in the seconds to come. The battle raged on, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. The alien mothership hovered ominously above, its weapons ready to unleash devastation. Captain Turner stood at the helm of the human ship, sweat beading on her forehead as she stared at the massive ship that threatened to annihilate everything she and her crew had fought for. The situation was dire. The alien forces were overwhelming, their waves of deadly drones now closing in on their ship. Time was running out. The human ship, though heavily damaged, was still in the fight, but every second felt like an eternity. The child, humanity's last hope, was the key to defeating the mothership. But what they didn't know was that the child was about to do something extraordinary, something that would change the course of the battle. The ship's AI began to flicker. A strange, soft hum filled the air as the child's body, weak and frail, started to glow. Her eyes flashed brightly, and suddenly, her mind connected with the ship's AI in a way the crew could never have predicted. Captain Turner watched, transfixed, as the child's powers activated, sending waves of energy through the ship's systems. The child's fragile form trembled as she reached deep into the alien technology inside her mind. "Captain," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice shaking. "It's happening. The child, she's unlocking something. The weapon. I think she's controlling it." A hologram flickered to life in front of Turner, showing the alien technology hidden deep within the mothership. The child's telepathic abilities allowed her to tap into the weapon, a devastating force capable of obliterating the mothership in one shot. But there was a catch: it was a one-time use only, a weapon meant to be unleashed only once before it would be spent, gone forever. "Do it," Captain Turner said, her voice filled with urgency. "Fire the weapon. We don't have time to waste." The crew worked quickly, pulling up the schematics and targeting the weapon's core. The ship was shaking from the constant barrage of enemy fire, but the humans pushed forward. They had no other choice but to trust the child and the mysterious power she had unlocked. Meanwhile, outside, the alien fleet had launched its final assault. The deadly drones, more numerous than ever, swarmed toward the human ship, their weapons primed for destruction. The human defenses were quickly being overwhelmed. The crew fought valiantly, but they knew it wouldn't be enough. They needed the weapon to destroy the mothership and end this war once and for all. Inside the medical bay, the child lay in a frail state, her energy flickering as she focused all her remaining strength on the weapon. Her small hands trembled as she connected herself with the ship's systems, her mind racing with the alien blueprints she had unlocked. She was the key to humanity's survival, and though she was mere moments from collapsing, she didn't hesitate. "Now!" Captain Turner shouted as the control room came to life with the weapon's activation. A powerful beam of energy surged through the ship, directed straight at the mothership. The moment the weapon fired, it was as though time itself slowed down. The intense beam of light shot through the darkness of space, a blinding flash of raw power. It collided with the alien mothership with catastrophic force, sending ripples of energy through the vast emptiness. For a split second, it seemed as though the ship was unscathed, its shields holding strong against the blast. But then, the shields flickered and failed, and the beam tore through the mothership's heart. The explosion was immense, lighting up the entire sector with the brilliance of a dying star. The ship crumbled under the force of the blast, the once mighty vessel now reduced to nothing more than debris floating in space. The humans cheered, their voices filled with triumph, but Captain Turner could hardly hear them. She had been watching the child the whole time, her heart heavy with a sense of dread that had not left her since the weapon was fired. The child had channeled so much energy into the ship, focusing all of her remaining strength to guide the weapon's strike. The effort had taken its toll. The child collapsed into Turner's arms, her small, fragile body now lifeless. Captain Turner's heart sank as she cradled the child, her hands shaking. The victory was hollow without the one person who had made it possible. "No." Captain Turner whispered, her voice barely audible. "No, not like this." The battle was over, but at what cost? The humans had won, the mothership was destroyed, and the alien fleet was scattering in disarray. Yet, their victory felt empty, knowing the child had given everything, her life, for this moment. Tears welled in Captain Turner's eyes as she held the child close. The crew, still celebrating their victory, had no idea what Turner was going through. She knew the truth. Without this child, without her sacrifice, the humans would have been wiped out, their struggle for survival nothing more than a fleeting memory. She had been right about the child. There was hope in her, hope that had transcended the boundaries of species, of war. In the end, it was the child's humanity that had saved them, even if she wasn't human. Turner closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. The child had become her family, and she would carry that memory with her always. "Rest now," Turner whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You gave everything. We won because of you." As the crew gathered in the command center, looking out into the stars, they knew one thing for certain: humanity had won, but it came at the greatest of costs. The sacrifice of the child would never be forgotten. Her legacy would live on, etched into the very fabric of their victory. They had defeated the alien threat, but it was the memory of one small, abandoned child that would remain in their hearts forever. The battle had been won, but the cost was steep. The alien fleet, once so powerful and menacing, had been utterly destroyed. The human ships, battered and broken, made their way back to the safety of their home base, their engines humming in the quiet of space. The vast emptiness that stretched out before them seemed almost too peaceful after the chaos they had just endured. For the soldiers aboard the ships, there should have been a sense of triumph, a moment to rejoice. They had defeated an entire alien race, destroyed their mothership, and ensured the survival of humanity. But as the ships entered the base's docking station, the victory felt hollow. Captain Ava Turner stood alone at the observation window, gazing out at the stars. Her hands were still shaking from the intensity of the battle. Despite the cheers of her crew, despite the banners celebrating their triumph, she couldn't escape the grief that weighed heavily on her heart. The child, the one who had unlocked the weapon that saved them all, was gone. The child's sacrifice had been the turning point, but it had come at the ultimate price. The human soldiers filed into the base, celebrating their victory, but Turner couldn't bring herself to join them. She had seen too much. The child had died in her arms, giving everything to help them defeat the alien forces. Turner had held the child in those final moments, feeling the warmth of her tiny body fade away, knowing they would never have made it without her. As she stood there, looking out at the stars, Turner's thoughts turned to the child's people. She had once believed that the aliens were all enemies, ruthless, cold, and driven by nothing but war. But now she knew the truth. The child had shown them that not all aliens were evil. The child had proven that even the most feared species had the capacity for kindness, for sacrifice, and for love. The child was not an enemy, she was a victim of her own people's twisted beliefs. Turner's mind raced as she thought about the child's final act of courage. She had been small, fragile, and alone. Yet, she had given everything to save humanity. Turner couldn't help but wonder what her daughter would have done in a similar situation. It was hard to ignore the deep connection she had felt with the child, a bond forged in the heat of battle, and sealed by the child's ultimate sacrifice. Back at the base, the soldiers were preparing for a celebration. The victory was significant, and it would be remembered as a turning point in the war. The humans had defeated the aliens, but for Captain Turner, there was no joy in that victory. The child's death had left a void, one that couldn't be filled by any amount of glory or recognition. The base was alive with activity. Soldiers laughed and shared stories of their bravery, their voices echoing through the halls. The lights were bright, and the air was filled with the sounds of music and celebration. But for Turner, the scene felt distant. She couldn't shake the image of the child's face, her small, innocent eyes filled with hope, even as she breathed her last. As the days passed, the human leadership made plans to honor the child's memory. They knew they owed her everything. Without the child, the war would not have been won, and humanity would have been wiped out. The child had made all the difference, and her sacrifice could never be forgotten. The memorial was built with care and reverence. It stood in the center of the base, a symbol of humanity's resilience and the cost of war. The child's image was projected as a hologram, her face glowing softly, forever captured in the memory of those who fought alongside her. The soldiers who had been there, who had seen the child's power and courage firsthand, stood silently around the memorial, reflecting on the incredible price they had paid. As Turner watched the memorial take shape, her heart felt heavy. The child had been a spark of hope in a war-ravaged galaxy. She had shown them that even in the darkest times, there was light, there was always a chance for redemption. The child's legacy would live on, not just in the memories of the soldiers who had known her, but in the hearts of every human who would hear her story. The base had fallen quiet, the celebrations now over. Soldiers gathered around the hologram, paying their respects. Captain Turner stood at the edge of the crowd, her eyes fixed on the image of the child. It was as if the child were still there, watching over them. In her sacrifice, the child had given humanity not just survival, but a new perspective, a belief that they could still fight for something more than just victory. They could fight for peace, for understanding, and for the future. In that moment, Captain Turner made a silent promise. She would carry the child's memory with her always. She would fight to ensure that the child's sacrifice was not in vain. The war might have ended, but the real battle, the fight for a future where peace and compassion triumphed, was just beginning. The soldiers, once so focused on defeating their enemies, now knew that there was more to life than just winning wars. They had been given a new purpose, a new understanding of the universe, and of the creatures who inhabited it. It wasn't just about defeating the alien threat anymore. It was about protecting the innocent, no matter where they came from. The victory was bittersweet, but in that moment, the humans understood that the true cost of war wasn't just in the battles fought, but in the lives lost along the way. And the child, who had been abandoned and alone, had given everything to ensure they had a future. She had been their hope, their final key to survival. As the base stood in the quiet after the storm, the soldiers and Captain Turner knew that they had won, but it was a victory tempered with loss and remembrance. The child had shown them the power of compassion in a galaxy filled with conflict, and for that, they would never forget her. The war was over. The alien fleet had been shattered, and the human race had survived, against all odds. But the victory, though significant, left a lingering sense of loss. Captain Ava Turner, standing alone by the memorial, could still hear the echoes of the child's sacrifice in her mind. The little alien girl, who had been abandoned by her own kind and saved by humanity, had shown the crew a deeper truth about the cost of war, compassion, and sacrifice. It had been a difficult journey for Turner. She had seen countless battles, watched friends and soldiers fall in the line of duty, and had faced the harsh realities of war. But nothing had prepared her for what she experienced with the child. She had expected an enemy, someone cold and calculating, part of a race hell-bent on domination. What she found instead was a scared, vulnerable child, fighting not for war, but for survival. The realization that not all aliens were enemies had shaken Turner's worldview. Now, as the memorial flickered softly in front of her, she reflected on everything the child had done. The girl had been a symbol of hope and innocence in the middle of a brutal conflict. Humanity had not only defeated an alien race, but they had been given a chance to understand something they had never before considered, the possibility of peace. The child had opened their eyes to a world beyond hatred, to the idea that no matter how different the species or the circumstances, there was always room for compassion. Turner knew that, despite the pain, this victory was the beginning of something far bigger than just the end of a war. Humanity had proven that they could change. They could see beyond their differences. They could embrace the idea of peace and coexistence, even with those they had once seen as enemies. The child had left behind a legacy, one that transcended the war, one that would guide humanity's actions from now on. The soldiers who had fought with Turner now understood that they were not just soldiers anymore. They were guardians, protectors of a new future, a new hope for peace. They would no longer just be fighting to survive, they would be fighting to ensure that the mistakes of the past were not repeated. They had seen what compassion could do, and they had seen the difference one small, innocent life could make. They would carry that with them, forever changed by the memory of the child. As Turner stood in silence, watching the stars, she felt the weight of the child's legacy heavy on her heart. But in that weight, she also felt a strange sense of peace. The future, though uncertain, now seemed filled with possibilities. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless civilizations, but perhaps, just perhaps, there was hope for them all. If humanity could learn to see beyond their differences, perhaps others could, too. Then, as if the universe itself was offering a final sign of hope, a strange signal began to broadcast across the communications channels. At first, the crew thought it was a glitch, some leftover distortion from the battle. But when they listened closely, they realized it was a transmission, a message from the very race that had once been their enemies. The message, though heavily encrypted, was clear. It was a sign of gratitude, a message of thanks from the alien species. Through the static, they heard the words, "To the ones who saved her. You have shown us mercy, and for that, we will forever be in your debt. We have seen the spark of hope in you. Perhaps peace is possible after all." The message ended abruptly, leaving the crew in stunned silence. It was a moment that would change everything. The aliens, once thought to be incapable of understanding compassion or peace, had sent a message that confirmed what Captain Turner had always believed deep down, that peace was not only possible, but within reach. The child had sparked something profound. Humanity had done what was once thought impossible. They had bridged the gap, extended their hands to an alien race, and shown that even in a galaxy torn apart by conflict, there could still be room for understanding. Turner felt a lump rise in her throat. She didn't know how long it would take, or if the message would truly lead to peace. But she knew one thing: this was just the beginning. It was a sign that humanity had a chance to be a force for good in the galaxy, not just a survivor, but a protector, a keeper of peace. As the memorial flickered one last time, Captain Turner turned away from the stars. She walked toward her crew, her eyes filled with determination. She could hear the sound of ships being prepared for the next phase of their journey, their new mission. The human race would no longer be just defenders of their own kind. They would now patrol the galaxy, not just to protect, but to offer refuge and safety to those who needed it most. Humanity had learned the hard way that peace didn't come easily. It was forged through sacrifice, understanding, and sometimes, through the smallest of gestures. The child had shown them that. And now, they would carry that lesson with them wherever they went. The ships lifted off, one by one, into the vastness of space. They were no longer just soldiers fighting for survival, they were ambassadors, hopeful that the universe could be a place of peace. They knew there would be more challenges ahead, more battles to fight. But they also knew that they were no longer alone. They had allies, and they had the belief that peace was possible. As the camera panned out, showing humanity's ships now patrolling the galaxy, the screen slowly faded to black. The stars twinkled in the distance, the future uncertain, but filled with the promise of hope. Humanity had not only survived, it had changed. And the galaxy, for the first time in a long while, seemed a little less dark.